Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Being or Be the CEO of Your Own Life podcast. I am here today with a great guest speaker, and you and her are going to dissect my brain or my human design. Stacey Rowan, yes, I'm saying that right, is a life coach who specifically specializes on human design. If you are like I was maybe about a year ago and have never heard of human design, I don't think you're alone. But also thank me for being here because you absolutely need to be aware of what human design is all about. And as a general, like I will let you, Stacey, I'll let you explain what human design is. You will do a much better job than I could possibly. But as a general statement, I want to say I'm a big fan of getting to understand yourself better. And there are so many different ways to do that. We've all been, if you've worked in corporate, I'm sure they've done some sort of personality assessment for you. And you know that you're a D or an E, or you've gone through some kind of assessments that tell you what you're like, tell you more about your personality and how to better communicate with others. I know, I mean, there's so many assessments of personality, and there's some in like the holistic world with, I can never say that word properly, Ayurveda. Thank you. And in all of those philosophies and theories, you will find a piece that is missing from your own understanding of yourself. And I love them all. Now, human design to me is fascinating. Like enneagrams were fascinating to me as well. And I want you guys to listen with an open mind. I've asked Stacey to actually do, what you call this, a chart, do my chart of human.
Well, basically talk about your design from your human design chart. Mm-hmm.
And so what you guys are going to hear is me from the inside out from human design, because I thought not only like having a description is great, but when you have like an actual tangible example of what that is and what it will do to me, you can then judge for yourself what this will do for you. Stacey specifically works with women in corporate and with business owners. And understanding your human design could really help you figure it out what tasks are better designed for you and how to make choices that are more in alignment with your strengths. So I'm not going to speak anymore, but I'm going to let you, Stacey, first of all, welcome into the show. I'm so happy you're here. I was excited from the moment you raised your hand that you wanted to be here. And I know you work in corporate yourself for a while, and like you find this is your calling, and I know it is. So I'm so excited that you're here and that my audience will get to hear from you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've been swimming in your design, so I have lots of, what I think you'll find interesting things to share. And yes, I spent years in corporate, actually until I had twin girls. So when they came along, I wasn't happy in corporate and I left to stay home with them. But I was, trying to figure out what did I want to do. And I found coaching along the way, and that was good. And then I found design, and I layered human design in with the life coaching. And I've found my sweet spot. I found what I love. And there are so many details and layers to human design that I love to learn. In some of those other personality assessments that you talked about, a learner is a strong strength of mine. So I love to learn, and I really think I'll never run out of things to learn about human design.
That's why it's fascinating, right? Like that's what makes it so fascinating. And so where are you located?
So I'm located in the eastern part of the state of Pennsylvania in the United States. And so I'm about 2 hours west of New York City and about an hour and a half north of Philadelphia for people who are familiar with the area.
Yeah, we're not that far then. Based on New York.
Yeah.
Because I'm not far from New York. All right. And so you have twin girls who are how old now?
They are 20, they will be 24 soon. So they're 23 now, which is amazing because I don't know about any other moms out there, but I still only feel like I'm in my 30s. So I don't know how that math works out.
How that happened is a mystery. And also, are they identical twins?
They are identical twins.
Oh,
So this was one of the things. So I started my career life as a chemical engineer.
yeah.
So very logical, very analytical, using my mind. And so when I learned about design, I was very curious about it, but also a little skeptical, right? And but what I found is that with my daughters, even in their, as identical twins, the way that their design is, it explains, because people always ask parents of twins, oh, are they alike or are they different? And I always say, yes, they're both alike and different.
And different.
And human design does a beautiful job of explaining why are they alike here and why are they different there. So that was a huge thing for me when I first came to design. And I was like, gauging it to see if I knew it resonated, but to see my level of belief in it, my level of trust in it, and the fact that they were only born 1 minute apart. And I think design does a beautiful job of explaining both their similarities and their differences. So I was sold.
That 1 minute. That's fascinating. One of my good friends just had identical twin girls. So I'm all lovey-dovey right now with mom twins because they need so much help. Moms of twins, and also because they're so cute. All right, let's just dive into human design. What is it?
So you did a great job of explaining it. It's a typing system. It's a way that someone can get to know themselves better. It can be hard for us to really know who we are, because from the moment we come into life, people start layering their opinions and expectations and their beliefs and their thoughts on us. And, that's how we learn as small children, is by taking in everything around us. But in that learning, we also get conditioned to be like other people and to be ways that maybe aren't best for us. So human design is a way of getting information about yourself and how you're meant to show up in the world, and also how other people experience you.
Interesting.
So traditional human design is often used for people who want to better themselves. It's the transformative growth, right? To become a higher, better version of yourself. I tend to work with design and apply it to business and career. So it's the same. Everything I share with my clients, they can take and apply to any part of their life. But the interesting thing that I think about human design related to business and career is that it is about how we interact with people, right? When you're working, whether it's your own business or someone else's, business is all about interaction.
I agree.
So it's the understanding of yourself, but it's also the understanding how other people experience you and how to best show up in that interaction to maximize the potential of the interaction.
Oh, this is so nice, because sometimes you might have an intention to be helpful, for example, and you're never interpreted by others as helpful. And you're like hitting yourself against the wall thinking like, but why? My intention was good. I coach people out of that, or try to help them understand, but this is so interesting. Okay, so anything else you wanted to say about human design?
So I want to just say that human design says that, everything is just when you're interacting with other people, it's an energetic exchange. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And when you operate correctly, according to your design, that energetic exchange can flow more smoothly, more easily. You're better understood. When you're not in alignment with your design, it comes across as staticky. It's easy to misinterpret, easy to misunderstand, and then that can create problems with you. So when the energy is flowing naturally and easily, according to your unique design, and you understand that, so you know how to get it to flow naturally and easily, then that unlocks the flow of life, whatever that is that you're hoping for. If it's more fulfillment, more satisfaction, if it's more prosperity, all of that comes just from being who you are and from when you stop trying to be ways that aren't you, and also when you release the judgment of, because sometimes I share with people and they're surprised in what I share, but a lot of times it's like, oh yes, they kind of know what I'm sharing, but maybe I've been really judging it.
Right.
And it's when you have the understanding of how it can work for you, this thing that you've seen as a weakness and wanted to push away,
right,
understand how it can work for you and work for others. And you then have that acceptance instead of judgment. Like, again, you can imagine that energy flowing much more smoothly.
I can see why that would be so helpful for in the corporate world specifically, where you might want to be like everybody else doing, I don't know, detail oriented jobs, and you push to like being detail oriented and you just can't. And then, like just accepting that that's not the job for you, or like in that particular way could be very, very easy to, it could make you feel at ease for sure and let go.
Right. And so much of what we're taught is that when you want to be successful, you look to someone else who's successful in the way you want to be successful. So if it's within the company that you're in and you want to raise to a certain level, well, how is that person that's already occupying that position? How did they get there? How were they successful?
Instead of thinking, how would I do that position with my own way of being? What will be the Olga way of doing that? That's, love it. Yeah,
exactly. You got it.
I got it. All right, let's dive in. So for those of you listening, Stacey and I talk about like how do we, like, because you just heard a lot of theory and that's great, but it's so much better when you can see it applied. So you're welcome. I'm about to expose myself to all of you in my design. So for the record, all I did for Stacey was give her my date of birth, location, and time, which between you and I is an approximate time because my mother has birthed 5 children. And I was number 4. And I feel that she was just like, I think this is it. And she will die to go like to her last breath, swearing that that's what it is. But I've got my doubts. So who knows? We're kind of speculating that this is me. And I know you play with the range. I'm like either 4 or 4:30. It was a C-section. So this should be really like clear somewhere in some document. I'll find it one day. So that's all I've given her. And also for the record, Stacey doesn't do readings alone. Like you have to be a client of hers who's committed to a bulk of months of coaching for her to do this reading. So if after listening to this episode, you're like, I want to have a reading. There are people out there who do that. Stacey is not one of them. She is committed to then helping you figure this out. And so if this is of interest, you can read more about it. You can go down the rabbit hole, like just to investigate all of it. And then if ever you want to have work to be supported this way, Stacey is your coach. If you are a business owner or looking for a career change or move up in your career, if you're in corporate and you're passionate about your job, but you just want to do it better, or am I saying this correct, Stacey? Is that what you do?
Yeah. So, sometimes people feel stagnant in their career and they're wondering why that is, or they think they should be at a higher position, but maybe they haven't been able to reach that, or a lot of things come up for people where maybe they've been forced into a transition or they're wanting to make a transition, and all of this information is helpful. And what I'll say about doing a reading versus working the way that I work is that, in a reading, you will definitely get a lot of information and you may have some incredible insights. It is then integrating those insights into your life, which takes some practice, but also sometimes the way that I see that human design can work so beautifully. And of course, it's because of my design. So I'm going to work different than other human design people. But for me, I love to do it in collaboration, because what I do is that I take the client's life experience, lived experience, and then I apply my knowledge. And it's the combination of that finds the specific, unique nuances of how your design shows up. So, for instance, we're going to talk about career type, and there's 4 types. Well, there's however many billion people in the world. You can see that type,
right?
You need more than that.
Yeah.
but for me and the way I work, I need to know a little bit about the person. So even you'll see that I took your design and I knew a few things about you from the couple times we've talked.
That's it. You don't really know. Yeah.
That I zeroed in on, which I was like, oh, this is wonderful.
Oh, I'm excited. So, okay, I absolutely get it. And that's why I wanted to make the disclaimer here, because you share with me that you don't do necessarily like what we're about to do here, unless we were going to do a follow-up. But I still believe this is probably the best way to showcase the amazing work that you do. So let's dive in and be really, really nice to me, Stacey. Not that
I'm going to be so nice to you. So now you shared a few things with me before we talked about things that you might be interested in learning about with your design. And so I'm not necessarily going to give you the most foundational information.
Yes.
Because I think for you to experience, you know, some of the depth and the power that comes from these different levels of it, and then to get your reaction and with your audience hearing your reaction, I think could be very fun. So
guinea pig over here. I'm in. Let's do it.
Okay. So some of the things that you talked to me about, where you talked about that you in the past maybe have had a tendency to overwork or work too much or too quickly, to go too fast with things. And so you were interested in speaking about that. So I looked at your design. Now, I'll try to give a little bit of information just so people, if they're looking, they can kind of understand even what I'm looking at in the design. So if anyone looks at their design chart, it's made up of large shapes, some which are colored in and some which are white, and then lines connecting the shapes. So it looks a little bit like a circuit board. If you imagine we're talking about energy, it's how does energy flow? It's a little bit like a circuit board. Any place that is colored in any color other than white means that we say that's defined in your design, which means you have consistent access to the energy of whether it's the large shape is a function or a full line is a strength or half a line is a trait. We say you have that defined, it's consistent for you, but it's also fixed, meaning you're going to show up in that energy, whatever that energy means.
Right.
Now, if you see the areas that are white, that's where you are receiving other people's energy. And you're experiencing that energy. So we have access to all of the energy in the chart. It's either defined in us or we're receiving it from other people.
Okay.
Now, what tends to happen in the white areas is we think we need to be a certain way because we're experiencing that through other people's energy. And we don't realize like, oh, I actually don't need to be that way. So I'll talk about an easy one. If you look at the chart, the second triangle from the top, the triangle that points down, is about conceptualization, and it shows up as certainty. So if you have it white, it's undefined, it's flexible, it's inconsistent. But what your brain may tell you a lot is you need to be certain. You need to be sure.
Right. So all the overthinkers, or no, like the ones that have a hard time making decisions.
It can be hard time making a decision, but it can also be showing up as being overly strong in your ideas or opinions because it's a need to be certain. Like I have to show up as if I'm certain. I want to know I'm right. I want you to tell me I'm right. I want you to agree with me, all of this.
I was about to tell you that cannot be me until you said like, no, you show up with very strong opinions. I'm like, oh, okay. maybe that's me.
Yes. And so you are undefined in that area. So maybe showing up with overly strong opinions because it's a need to be certain. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but in this overwork and working too fast, a couple interesting things came up as I looked at this.
So what is my prototype? What's my type?
Okay, so you're a classic builder is your type.
Classic builder.
classic builders. So there are 4 types. And the language that I use is the business language, which is different in places from the traditional language. So a builder in traditional language is a generator.
Okay.
So if you're like on social media, people tend to share with the traditional language. So you would be a generator.
Okay. So what does that mean? Just from that to you, what does that tell you, even before looking at all my colors?
Before looking at the details, what it means is that you are meant to, you're not meant to initiate, which a lot of generators or builders don't like that because they automatically go, how do I get anything done if I'm not allowed to start anything?
Right.
But what you're meant to do is that your energy naturally attracts things to you. Imagine it kind of like as a big magnet. And as these things flow into your life, you respond. And you respond, in general, what we say is you respond from your gut. Now, your gut can show up. It can feel a lot of different ways to you.
Yeah.
But the decision is coming from your body, not from your brain. And so an opportunity shows up to you and you check in with your body. And your body either says yes, it says no, it may not answer, or it may give a kind of not now, it might be a pause. And that can be either, normally that has to do with timing, is like, this isn't the right timing. So it's like a not now, ask me later.
Right.
But it could also be, so for our builders or our generators, it's easier for us to, I'm also a builder, so you'll notice me saying us. It's easier for us to answer yes, no questions. So for instance, if someone says to you very broadly, what do you think we should have for dinner?
I hate it.
You might be like, I have no idea why
You go blank. Yeah.
Don't ask me. But if someone says, should we have chicken for dinner?
I'll know the answer. Okay. Yes or
You
no.
might know the answer.
Right.
So sometimes you don't get an answer because they're asking it in a way that doesn't work particularly well for you.
So I find it interesting to me when I regenerated the word, which is why I ask you, I would think it's the initiator. It's the one that takes the initial action, generates. So this is very interesting already.
The reason why it's called a generator is because you have a generative energy. All generators have the energy resource defined, which is a generative energy that allows you to build, which is why we call them builders in the business side of things, to build, to create. And when you're using that energy on things that you're very engaged in, that you're enjoying, what happens is you can use up all of that energy, and it's a lot of energy when you're engaged in what you're doing. You can use that all up in a single day. You go to bed at night, you sleep well, you get up the next day and it's been regenerated. It's all, you have it back. And so generators have a lot of energy with which to build and create and do things. So they are very much like the doers of the world.
Yep.
When you're doing the correct things. Now, if you're doing things that you don't enjoy, that you're doing because you think you should, or you're in a job that you hate, that isn't well suited to you because you listened to your mind instead of your body when you said yes to the opportunity, you can actually get into a degenerative cycle with your energy and feel this incredible dragging exhaustion. And it kind of feels like, oh my gosh, I only did 3 tiny things today and I'm so exhausted. How can that possibly be? It's like you're not tiring in proportion to the work you're doing. So that's a good way to tell if you happen to be a generator or a builder, if you're doing the correct things or not. Right.
Yeah, I don't have that feeling often.
Yeah.
Anymore.
So then you're probably doing a good job listening to your gut and allowing things to come to you.
Yeah. I wait for body feeling to know, oh, okay, now it is. Now it's time to apply, or now it's time to make that decision. But until until I don't find that feeling in my body, I'm like, nope, no, not right now. Nobody can move me.
Yes. And that's how it should be as the generator or builder type. But a lot of people are really disconnected with their bodies. Like a lot of people are like, what do you mean? What do you mean I need to feel it in my body? What does that feel like?
Yeah.
And I can't tell anyone what it feels like, but I can guide them to be able to uncover how it feels. So are you able to explain, do you know what you're like when it's a yes? Do you know
100%? It's as strong as my opinion. Maybe because I look for that certainty, right? Like I'm like, hold on, I'm gonna be certain once I know. Like it's gonna be no questions. Like when I was pregnant, my son didn't like I lay on my left side. And I don't know how I knew that, but I was certain that that was the case. So it could be 1 a.m. And if I naturally had turned to that side, something would wake me up. And I'm like, oh, I know, I'm so sorry. You don't like that side. When I went to give birth, they were like, lay on your left side. I'm like, oh no, the baby doesn't like that. They're like, that's funny. Lay on your left side. I'm like, okay. And they had the monitor and they're like, oh, he's in distress. And I'm like, tell you.
Yeah.
How did I know that? Like, I don't know. The body told me. The only way I can tell you, the body told me. And it's certainty. It's the opposite of anxiety, which I could feel, right? So like, I feel that that's the body saying like, wrong way. All right, let's dive in. What else do you have in there?
So this is really in the details of what you have, but you're asking about why might you overwork, or why might you work too fast? So like what might cause that?
Mm-hmm.
So with the overworking, because you have a white, if you look at the willpower, if you're looking at the chart, is the smallest triangle in there. And for you, it's white. It's not filled in a color. So it means you're receiving from other people. And the message that you could be receiving from like society is that you have to have willpower, like consistent willpower. And you don't have consistent willpower. It's white. But you also don't have any of the lines coming off the willpower are also white. So we call that completely open. So it means that you get to experience all of the different energies of the willpower, which will over time, and probably at this point in your life is starting to be like, oh, I have such awareness of these different energies that I have a lot of wisdom around willpower and when willpower will work and when it won't work and who's relying on willpower. But it can show up in the shadow side. So any place that's white can be a shadow, which means it's something that takes us off track. Mm-hmm. And the willpower can take you off track by wanting to prove that you're as good as someone else, wanting to prove that you're enough, wanting to prove that you're worthy. So if you're seeing what other people are doing and are comparing yourself to them and you're like, well, I'm as good as they are, I need to do this too, that can lead to overworking, because it's like you're trying to prove to yourself or to someone else, I'm as good as they are. I can do as much as they can. Of course, I can do this too. And so what happens is you're basically ignoring the body feeling, right? And you're jumping in based on the mind saying, hey, look what they're doing. You need to be doing that too. So yeah, does that
find this especially speaks to me about overspending. Like if somebody has a nice sweater, I'm like, I want that sweater. Like there is no, hold on, think about it. What do you want? I also think this is like, I don't necessarily overwork anymore. Like I burn out once. Thank you. Lesson learned. But I certainly I'll be more of, tell me what works and then I will do that thing, versus sitting there and thinking, I am less this way, thanks to the coaching we've received together. Because I think now I want to lead. So what would, like, I go back to my business names. What would be Olga's way of doing that one thing? And like, I'm just letting my brain think like, well, I don't like 12 emails. So I'm going to write, how many do I want to write? and test my own thing. And so like but this explains for sure the wanting to overdo and overthink. And I don't know, what would you say about anxiety? Because I would say anxiety is part of my my nature. And when you say open to receiving energies, I literally feel like I feel everybody's energies.
Yes.
And I'm able to discern now mine from theirs, but that took me years to practice.
Yeah. So there are 9 different functions within what we call the body graph, or within your human design chart. And you have 3 which are defined. So 3 which are consistent from you and it's your own energy. The other 6 you're receiving from other people.
No wonder.
You're receiving a lot of energy from other people. And 2 of you're undefined in your mind. So you're, in terms of anxiety, it can be the pressure of other people's thoughts or their mental anxieties.
Their experience.
Yeah. And then emotionally, you're also undefined. So like literally feeling their emotions. So if they're, upset, nervous, worried, you can feel all of that as well.
Oh my God, you're describing I always say like my superpower and the curse of being me is feeling. Yes. And when I can use that, but there are things that I feel like I cannot unattach from, that were not my story, were somebody else's story. And it felt so vivid in my own experience. This explains it. So what are the 3 defines that I have? Like, what is left here? I'm picking up from everybody.
So what you have defined is you have that energy resource we talked about, which gives you the energy to work and doing things you love and to get a lot done, and to be productive and to build and to create and all of those beautiful things. You have the drive and stamina defined, and that's the pressure to move your body, the pressure to thrive, the pressure to you don't have it connected to the emotions, but it can be also the pressure to experience emotions, right? Drive and stamina is related to adrenaline and stress in the body. Like that's, but like the adrenaline that gets us moving.
Right.
And for you, it is connected to survival instincts. So that is the other thing. So the fact that you knew that laying on your left side wasn't correct, right? That your baby didn't like that. Probably you were more attuned to that because you had survival instincts to find. It's like you understand about, consistently have the energy to know what is healthy for you. And because at that point, the baby was part of you, it's like, oh, I know this isn't healthy for the baby, right? It is about survival and survival instincts.
Which also explains the anxiety, because anxiety is a survival mechanism.
Yes, it can be. It can be. It's like the overactive, right? Mm-hmm. Anxiety can be like, normally it's like, okay, we took those survival instincts, but then it's like they've become maybe overactive. It can be anxiety.
So for all my clients who say I'm a witch, I think we've defined why they think I'm a witch, because I actually feel their feelings. And then I just say them in words, and they're like, oh my God, where were you in my head? I'm like, and also why for me it's so hard to just do a video to an audience that I don't see. Because if I feel the audience, I'm a great speaker for that reason. I feel the audience, I'm like, oh, these people need, I don't know.
Yes. Really? So you're also a great speaker, because that was something you brought up to me. You're also a great speaker because one of the traits of communication and action that you have, so it's like an energy of the throat, which is how we express ourselves, communicate, and also how we take action and manifest things. You have a trait called caution. But what caution, the trait of caution means is that it is about when you have something meaningful to say, something that can create change for someone else, it's actually, then you're in the mood, when you're in the mood to share something that you feel can be meaningful, transformative for someone else, the power of your voice. So even more than the words you speak, but the vocal frequency that you speak at, the frequency of your voice, the pacing, the feel of your voice in and of itself can create change in other people.
Wow, that makes me cry. That feels like such a great gift to have given. Wow, I love that one. I'll keep that one.
So part of your part of why you're a great speaker is that you have that, but you also are undefined in communication and action, or in your throat. So you have, when it's undefined, it can show up as something that takes us off track in the shadow, or with experience as we understand how it's meant to work, either just through living life or through studying our design. You could develop great wisdom in the areas where you're undefined.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like you have wisdom about communication, right? That's part of what makes you a great speaker. I have a defined throat or communication and action, so I don't know this, but what I've heard other people say is that you can feel when what you've communicated lands for someone else.
I feel that I can feel that.
Yeah, like you can tell when they receive it.
But maybe because I feel all the feelings.
Yes, it could be that as well. You could
so maybe that informs me that, okay, this landed somewhere. Yes. So when you talk, so I'm looking at the receiving or undefined as a negative. That's how my brain is making it seem like, oh, that's not good. You're not defined here. And maybe it coincides with the thought I've had that it's my curse to feel feelings and to always be like, I walk into a hospital and I promise you, I know I can feel everything everywhere. Like I dislike hospitals because of what it feels like in my own little existence.
Yeah.
And this is not new to me. So explain this receiving a little bit more so that I'm not left with like, see, no wonder. Like this is all my biased thinking is like, there you go.
So when we look at design, whether it's defined or whether it's undefined, there's always the resourceful way of being with that part of our design and an unresourceful way. So when we talk about what's undefined and what we receive from other people, we talk about it. It can be a shadow. It can be something that we see in someone else and we think we should be that way, or we think we should have consistent access to that energy. And it takes it off track of who we're actually meant to be. But it can also be the wisdom. And the wisdom is, oh, I've experienced this energy a million different ways. You know, for you in emotions, you've experienced the emotions of everyone you've come across.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's different because it's always based on their design. So everybody's emotions feel different because it's based on their design and what is fixed within them and what is inconsistent in their receiving from other people. So you have a million experiences of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps you be very empathetic. It helps you understand people's emotions. It helps you even tell people maybe how they're feeling before they realize it.
Yep.
Right. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. I am feeling sad. How did you know that? And you're like, well, I know that because I feel everybody's emotions and I've figured out what sad looks like or feels like. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So everything can be a blessing and can be a curse.
Mm-hmm.
When we look to the definition side, so it's like, oh, we think definition's good, it's consistent. Well, it's also fixed. It's also, so for you, you only know your way of being in survival instincts. You can't know what it's like for someone who has that undefined. You can't know what it's like for someone who has a different energy in that than you. You only get to experience it your way. Now, when you are true to your way, you can deliver a lot of gifts from that. That's your definition. It's always available for there. You can lean on that. You can know what is healthy for me, what is not. You can trust that. You can afford to be spontaneous because you have great awareness of what is necessary for your own survival. But the downside is you're not in tune to other people as much in that, right? You can offer it to people, but like, this is the only flavor I have to offer you. I can't offer you all the flavors.
Which is interesting. All of my clients define me as authentic. And I wonder how much of it is this. Like, I can only be me. I cannot offer you, like you said, any other. So you're going to get.
Right.
So quick, does that make sense or not?
Yes,
That's
yeah, that's it. Authenticity is really, so even people, who have no idea of this, who don't understand it and don't understand about energetic exchange, they can still feel it. We've all interacted with someone, where, I don't know, someone comes up to you on the street to ask for directions and they walk away and you're like, wow, something was really off with that person. Like they just didn't feel good to me, but we don't know why. Right. Or you walk into a room and it's like, okay, yeah, I don't think I want to be here. I need to go. Something's not right here. Something, right. And we can't put it to words, but we can feel when someone else isn't living true to themselves, when they're trying to be something that they're not.
Right.
We can feel that and we can sense that even if we can't put words to it. It's this nonverbal communication that's happening. So when we are in alignment, then people can sense that. And when we're out of alignment, they can sense it. Now, there are many people who find their alignment just through living and paying attention to their life. And they sense, oh, things go better for me when I act like this. And they go worse for me when I act like this. And so, it sounds like you've found a lot of your natural alignment. But there are a lot of people who are so disconnected and lost up in their heads and listening to everybody else and, have a disconnection with their body. And they're like, I don't know how to tell. I don't know. And that's where human design can really come into play. Or maybe there's like, well, I think I know myself, but I'm still not seeing the results I want in my life, or life isn't, flowing the way I want it to. And then, so it gives you, it's like an instruction manual. Okay, where am I operating according to myself? And maybe I'm even like being true to myself, but I'm in that less resourceful expression of it.
So somebody with my characteristics of receiving, like, help me think of, first of all, I want to hear what you think is the best job for me. That I'm curious. This is the moment of truth. But before you do that, if I feel everybody's emotions, but then my defines are survival. So like, how can I survival, stamina, and energy? Like I would always say I am an energy bunny. Like I know, and even compared to other people, I've got energy for days, like no problem. If I'm doing the right thing, otherwise I'll be drained. So that tells me that, to me, it's so easy to be like, not good for me, but this makes me feel really good and energized, and I could do it forever. How would I use then, or what would you suggest then? Like for somebody like me, who I can't, my mind, like my husband recently said, you'd be a person that if you read the bad type of information, will lose you. You'd be like, oh, and I went off with this information and I went on a tangent with it. And he's not wrong. As much as I hated to hear that, I'm like, and my mom has always defined me as easy to influence. Like if I hear somebody had cancer, my brain would be like, oh my God. And I could feel people's feelings that I have never met, right? Like that would be me. So how could I use my defined, and not that the receiving are weaknesses, but how could I use that energy and stamina and those survival instincts to maybe compensate for the absorption of energy? Or how do you place that boundary with, like, I honestly, that is why I stopped doing trauma therapy. I'm like, that's definitely not for me.
Yeah. And so part of it is for you is as simple as, what is your body, like the easiest answer is, what is your gut saying? And you follow your gut, and your gut says, this doesn't feel good and this is draining me, then that's not right for me. But as you go into your design, and it is about, well, when I notice that I'm, there are patterns of behavior that you can notice, like, oh, I'm living in the shadow of these functions. I'm not living in the wisdom of it. Or I'm living, even in our defined functions, we can be living in the unhealthy expression. And it's about awareness, and you become aware of that. And then you say, how do I shift back? Like, how do I shift back into the alignment? And shifting back into the alignment is always getting back into what is defined. So for you have strengths of ambition, tenaciousness, power, and custodianship. So for you, ambition, we all know what ambition, right? It is that desire to improve, that desire to climb the ladder, whatever that is. If it's to improve ourselves, often and in human design, it's often related to business. It's about our immediate community, right? And it is taking care of our immediate community by raising the whole community up, normally through material goods. So like by, climbing the corporate ladder or making more money or doing but it's for it to work for you, it has to work for your immediate community as well. There has to be a give and take. There's got to be loyalty. There is a bargain. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to make the money, but you're going to do something else for me. Mm-hmm. Right. You also have custodianship, which is also about your immediate community. It's about establishing the laws and the rules of the community so everybody knows the correct behavior so that we can all behave correctly together and everyone gets taken care of.
Yep.
So it's like we want to take care of everybody. Tenaciousness is knowing what risks are worthwhile in order to thrive in life. It can show up as a fear of risk, but it can also be like, no, I am going to take risks because like life is about more than just surviving. Life is about thriving. It's about, getting a lot out of it. Power, again, for you, this is, power is a very individual energy, and it is about the energy of survival. And it's you having this instinctive knowing of what is necessary for you to survive. And it's about instinctive knowing in the moment of, what you're meant to respond to in order to survive. But in doing that, in being in your own power, you empower other people. So it's always going back to those places. It's always going back to what is defined. It's going back to, remembering I'm not initiating, I'm letting life come to me, then I'm responding in my gut. It's about understanding your public role, which is how you serve other people. So you said, what is the best job for me to have? Human design can't be like, you should be a chef. That's the best thing. But what it can tell you is, okay, based on your design, does that support the career you're in? So if you're helping other people be successful in career or business, that makes sense because you have the strength of ambition. So you're sharing what you understand about ambition with other people. You're sharing with tenaciousness is like, well, how do I be tenacious? How do I be tenacious in my career, in my business, in order to thrive? Your public role, which is called profile in traditional design, you are in traditional design, they would give numbers. They would say you're a 5-1. Okay. We give words. It's a messenger authority. The messenger authority is that you show up with practical solutions, often in times of crisis. People come to you and say, oh my gosh, can you solve my problem? Can you fix my problem? And if you can, and you fix it, then, that is how you're meant to operate. Now, if you can't, and you say you can, they're going to trash your reputation. So I advise against that. But when people come to you and ask, can I solve my problem? And you can solve their problem. And your gut says, yes, this is a correct problem for me to solve. That's what you're meant to do. So if we kind of put that together, you're meant to be a problem solver for people, to bring them unique, often out of the box solutions to help them fight through times where they feel stuck, and to help guide their ambition so that they can, up level their life. And whether you're doing that as a coach or a hairdresser or a school teacher, like that's still going to show up for you.
Yeah, I essentially became a therapist and a coach because this happened too much. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to bill people for this. This is what I'm doing. So it chose me. It feels that way.
Yes.
That's very interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
So there's one piece I wanted to share with you, because this was something in the group we were in that I know you asked about, and I know you've received coaching on. And my sense was the coaching didn't particularly necessarily resonate well with you. And then as I started like looking in your design, I was like, oh my gosh, this explains why you are the way you are and why that probably did not land super well with you. So we have something called a life work theme. Traditional design calls it incarnation cross, but I like life work theme. It tells you more what it's about. It's about the theme of what you're here for. What are you going to do for people, or what is your kind of purpose and part of being here?
Mm-hmm.
And the title of yours is called obscuration, and I'll tell you what that means, because I was like, there's 384 life work themes, different life work themes, so I had to look it up. I didn't know off the top of my head, but this is what it says. You can use details or statistics to impress people or to obscure things, to kind of like lead people maybe a little off track by obscuring things, by just overwhelming them with detail. And so to hide things behind the detail. For you, when you're paying attention to detail, once you sort through the detail and you look at all this detail, now there may be a lot of detail that ends up doesn't really mean a lot, but every so often you paying attention to these details will lead to some extraordinary discovery. So it is good for you, it is correct for you to get into details that to other people might seem unimportant or unnecessary. And as I recall the coaching that you received, is you were asking about certain details. Well, what about these details? What about these numbers and whatever? And the general guidance was you don't need to pay attention to the numbers.
Right.
Like it's not helping you to pay attention to the numbers. And this is like the beauty of human design, is because in general, that seems like, good advice. It was like, okay, go pay attention, do this instead. And it's like, oh yeah, that seems very logical. But when I look at your design says your conscious core essence, or conscious sun is what we'd call it in traditional design. Your conscious core essence is a trait that makes up about 70% of who you are. And yours is in the trait of details. So of course, details are going to be super.
You know what's hilarious? To my husband, I am not detail oriented. And I hear my husband tell me all the time, it matters, pay attention to the details. And I was like, maybe I'm not detail oriented. I guess it's from, like you said it, get the details that might seem unnecessary to others. Like if my husband comes home and he says like, it went well. I'm like, no. You can't just say it went well. I need to know all, and what did they say, exactly what words they used. Like, so yes, I am detail oriented a certain way that might seem unnecessary. And the details that to him are necessary, I'm like, I don't know if I use white milk or chocolate milk. Who cares? He's like, I do. So that's fascinating to me. And like, you're right. I don't even operate in my business without having collected data. I tell this to my clients all the time. Like if I'm going to implement, I first pilot it. I probably survey more than most coaches. All my clients get a lot of surveys because I'm like looking at data all the time.
Right, because you want the details of that data. Yeah. Right. Because at times that is going, and you may go through a lot of data that is like, okay, that didn't really, amount to some insight or a change. But then every once in a while, you're going to come across it and you're going to be like, I'm so glad I had the detail.
And I think you just brought it up. I am looking for wisdom in that detail. Like I know I'm looking for something, and it's the detail that's going to give it to me. So yes, the details of did I leave the stove on or off? I'm not looking for wisdom there. So I might be like completely aloof to certain things. But when I know I'm searching to understand something, I'm like, hold on, I'm going to ask a million questions here because I really need to know.
And for you, the details that are likely to be important, because this is a synthesis, it all works together, are details that are going to let you problem solve for other people, particularly related to moving up in the business world, moving up in their ambition, raising up the whole community that you're part of so that they can thrive and so that they have the, instinctual knowing and power to thrive within life so that everybody can be taken care of and have what they need to live their life. Like that is where the details are going to come in. And it's interesting because I then looked up specifically details. So 62 is like, the meaning of it is, that's your trait. 62, the trait of details, is it's about trying to be factual to get people to understand. So you're collecting details so that you can understand, but also so that you can then explain that understanding and give people the facts so that they can understand.
That describes me as a coach. I tell them, this might be tedious to you, but I really think you need to understand so that you know why I want to break patterns. And they're like, this is fascinating, although you're not telling me, like, what to me is shock is the 9 functions where I'm receiving, but also explains like what I've said all along. Like, I just feel like I cannot watch most shows unless I've already watched them and I know they give me a good feeling. I'd rather not, because I will keep that energy with me. Like, I can't easily just say that was a movie and move on. It takes me time to unprocess that from my system.
Yes. And also in your public role, because you're a messenger authority, the authority piece is a very empathetic public role. It is the most empathetic of the public roles. So even without all of that all those white functions, undefined functions, you would still be empathetic. You would still feel things deeply because of your public role. It is part of what helps you solve problems for people. It's what supports the messenger, the ability to bring a solution that can really work for people. And so it's about understanding, yes, I am able to feel everybody else's stuff, but I don't need to take it with me or carry it. And so it's finding ways that allow you to release it. Right. Yeah. So that you can be like, oh, okay, I can feel I was just, with clients all day, or I just watched this movie and I'm feeling all of these emotions and I understand they're not mine. So it's about developing systems that say, okay, how do I release this? And, how do I let go? How do I process it so I don't carry it with me so it doesn't continue to impact me? Or maybe even getting to the point where you can let it flow through you so you can feel it, but it doesn't without the impact on you.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, that has been my lifelong work.
Yes. And it will continue to be, because it's not like we go, okay, I'm done with this part of my design, but you do it at different levels, right? It's like you're spiraling up. And so maybe as a kid, you found it was, you had less understanding and things impacted you even more. And now as an adult, you've already put things in place or stopped doing things, stopped watching certain movies so that you just are like, okay, I don't have to deal with the impact of that.
Right. So what I would find hard now as somebody who's experienced like trauma and have worked in trauma is to detach from things that I've already been exposed to, sort of thing, right? Like to just not let that energy indefinitely stay. So I guess it's a constant just coming back to, it's not my energy, come back to this new energy. Because the body will speak loudly through anxiety. Like my body tells me, you're thinking the wrong way. Or like, that doesn't belong to you. Like to me, that's what the purpose of anxiety is in my body, is to remind me of like, you're not listening. That's not your life. Your life is calm, nice. Like it gives you other feelings. Even if my life is chaotic, if that was the case, it would still not be anxious. It would just be like, I tap into wisdom. Like, what is this giving me? What wisdom is this giving me? So it's an interesting approach.
And sometimes, what can be really helpful is just giving awareness to the feeling, like just, having a moment of slowing down, being by yourself, having a little quiet and, just describing the feeling as it feels in your body. So instead of going to, oh, this feels anxious, go to, I have, my stomach is kind of churny, or I feel like I have a black cloud above my head, or this. And it's like, once you give it this awareness, sometimes it's just like, okay, you can give it the awareness and release it with love and be like, send it on its way. Like sometimes I find with emotions, a lot of us just tend to keep carrying them around, and it's like what we don't recognize is
because the brain attaches to a story, right? And so once there's a story, like with the brain's like, oh my God, I remember that other time. Like we were talking to a good friend of mine who went through cancer 5 years ago, and she has to go every year to check up, and that's triggering. Obviously, the brain's like, what if you have cancer? She happened to run into 2 people that day at the hospital, and her brain was like, of course you're running to people. That means you're going to need their support soon. That means the results are going to, right? And so that's a classic example of what my brain would do. My brain would be like, oh, but if you just have the feeling of like whatever you describe physically feels, without, this is what I teach my clients, to detach from the mental story. Like that's thoughts are thoughts. And then there is this physical sensation that you felt.
right.
That she probably had even before she met them, right? Like there was a physical sensation she had.
Right.
And then her brain just organized a thought to just make it fit.
And with design, what is super interesting is that we can go into design and be like, okay, but why does my brain go to that instead of go to that specific story, right? There is the piece of that was part of my lived experience, but let's say, for instance, that she is receiving in inspiration and conceptualization, which is the mind. And with the mind, it wants to know it when you're undefined like that, it wants to know, it wants certainty. So it's almost like I'm going to claim the certainty. Well, I know that means that I must be going to need their thing.
Describe my source of anxiety. That's it. So my brain tries to, what does this mean?
Yeah, it's because it's like, okay, the brain is like, I'll give you certainty.
I'm really not like
even if it's totally made up. Like, even if it's totally made up. But when you recognize that, you can go, oh, I see my brain reaching for certainty. You know what? But I actually understand that because I'm undefined in the mind, I'm not meant to have certainty. I don't need certainty. There's magic for me in the uncertainty. And I can just say, thank you, brain, for trying to make me safe by giving me certainty, but I'm actually okay. And
that type of certainty I don't want. Thank you very much. This is great, super helpful, because I would say, I used that specific, without knowing, tool, especially trauma. I had a really stressful pregnancy, and I remember driving to the hospital and then just telling my husband, stop. I'm gonna ask my body, how's the baby? And then I would just have a feeling, and I'm like, oh, you can drive back. We're good. We don't need to. And he was like, he believes me. He's like, I trust you. Your body, like you're like a witch for your body. You know what's up. And I think this is so interesting for all of my hypersensitive humans, because I talk to them often. Like we just feel feelings. I think that I live very happy in uncertainty in many ways. Like when COVID hit, I was not fazed by like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm like, we've never known the future. So I'm okay with that wisdom of uncertainty. But I absolutely love how you're giving a name to what my brain tries to do to find certainty in moments of uncertainty when I'm not generating that myself.
Yes.
Right. So it attaches to a story. And for anybody listening here who's had anxiety, tell me if this is not your brain too. Anxiety is like, but I want to know that if the tree falls on my car, that there is help. So let me think of all the scenarios in which this tree falling in my car, right? And to get some little bit of certainty today. Will I be okay? Will I still be loved? Would I survive the rejection? Whatever it is that causes that fear.
Yeah. And all of those, like there's, with the 9 functions, there's like a different thing that the brain would pull to. So you said, would I still be loved? Would I still know where I'm going? That's the identity and direction function. Like, would I still be able to move forward? Would I still be loved? That's identity and direction. Like, would I still be good enough is willpower, right? That's worthiness and value. Would I be safe is survival instincts. So as you go through your own design, and this is the work you can do when you work on it, like a reading is great. It's like, okay, it validates some things, but it's like, okay, well, now I know I'm open in all these areas and I receive energy. And it's like, but how do I get myself out of the anxiety? How do I get myself off the track I'm not supposed to be on and on the right track? And that's what working with it over time can do, because you learn to see the stories your brain is making. And once you see them, they have so much less power over you. You understand what's happening is like, oh yes, my brain is trying to be kind and give me certainty, but that's not actually the certainty I want. I don't need to listen. I don't need to buy into that. And I can check in with my gut and say, do I need to pay attention to this story? Right? No, I don't need to.
Okay, Stacey, I'm hiring right after this.
Yeah, and it's just such beautiful work, because it does bring, it's what you said, is like, it creates that, what my clients say all the time is like, they know themselves better than they ever have, but more important is they develop, and it's going to bring tears to my eyes, because this is what I want to do for people. It creates that trust in yourself. You don't need to listen to all of the millions of voices outside of you, whether that's the nightly news or, your overly anxious in-laws or whatever. It's like, inside yourself, whether you're on track or off, whether you're good or not. And if you're not, you know how to get back to that sense of stability.
Yeah. And I hold that belief for my clients. Like for me, like I got water eye because you got water eye. For me, that is the ultimate being of service, is to believe everybody has it within them. And like I know that, like I know, because I feel it in my body. Like, so everybody has it, right? Like everybody has this ability to know my path, not my path. I like this. I don't like this so much. You brought something up that made me emotional that I wanted to say about your clients. Oh, it skipped my brain. Yeah, I find that this is fascinating, and it's an added knowledge. You can add this to any self-development work that you're doing. Yes. Oh, I remember, ambitious. You say that I'm ambitious and I like helping people to be ambitious. I actually call my clients the pre-Oprahs, because I say they all have the potential to be Oprahs, but they're caught up in their mind on things. And I just want them to be Oprah. So I'm like, let's go. So I often refer to them as type A's, or the overdoers, the doers of the world. I want to coach them. I'm like, let's go. I want you to be as successful as possible. And within my coaching position, I never see other coaches as competition. I've just been interviewing all kinds of coaches who might do similar work. I'm like, come on. I want you to thrive. Like if you go high, I go high somehow, like, in my emotions. So this is all like making a nice little comeback.
Yeah. And ambition, in the strength of ambition, it is that your success comes from helping other people be successful. Like in the human design definition, it is the more that you help people be successful, like by default, the more successful you will be.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that in my heart for sure. So you've mentioned power a few times, and I know we're going this too long, so I want to bring it together, but this is fascinating. And of course, we're talking about my favorite subject, me. So I want to stay here forever. You said the word power a few times, and I've had in the past discomfort with being powerful. I've held a lot of positions of power in my career, and I've always been like, oh, I don't want to abuse power. I don't want to abuse power. How can I, and knowing that I don't have the defined willpower, which I would have always said that I have a strong willpower, but I think it's because I'm tenacious and ambitious that I kind of feel like I'm on a purpose. I'm doing this, and like the builder. How would you say then I could successfully use power to power myself out of like the shadows? Would that be awareness? What you were saying, awareness, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So when you have the awareness and you can see like, oh, okay, wait, I can actually feel my brain hunting for certainty, or I can see I'm comparing to them. They bought that sweater, and I'm not even sure I like that sweater, but I want to buy that sweater because I know I deserve it as much as them, and I'm just going to show the world, like here.
No, for me, it's like, it looks good on them. I want the thing that looks good. I want it.
Right. And, so But when you see that happening, like you develop the awareness and you see that happening, and then it's just easy to be like, okay, well, but is my gut saying yes to the sweater, to that sweater? Or is it saying, oh, you know what? It's time to go out and get some sweaters that I'll look great in, right?
Right.
Or is it saying, is it a like life tapping me on the shoulder and saying, you know, there's some place where you feel like you're not getting what you want. And so go look a little deeper. And that's, so we haven't talked about, but when I work with clients, I do human design combined with mindset, because it is like, okay, well, how do we unfold that and see, well, why is this shadow coming up? And is there mindset work that needs to be done there to release it? Also, if there's something in your design that you've been really taught not to. So for instance, there's a public role that's called a pioneer, and they learn best through trial and error. If they were raised with parents or teachers or grandparents that taught them mistakes were bad and should be avoided at all costs, they're going to have a very hard time embracing their design that is trial and error until they deal with the mindset piece of that.
Right.
So, you know, and it always comes back to just being to that most basic, okay, am I initiating? Like I'm trying for certainty. So do I see that I'm trying to go out and initiate something instead of letting something come to me? I'm not initiating, isn't natural for my type. Okay, I'm going to sit back and wait. Is my gut saying yes, or is my gut saying no? It's going back to the basic foundations of your design to be like, am I really listening to my body, or is my brain in control? And if it's like, okay, yeah, my brain is definitely in control here and trying to run the show, then it's having the means to drop back into your body and find, you know, the wisdom of your body to guide you. And just to say, okay, brain, I am aware of what you're doing, and I'm not going to fall for it this time.
Right. I also find it interesting, and I find I feel some resistance towards the not being the initiator. I feel like, what? That's not my nature. What the heck?
But what I suspect for you is that you're not actually initiating, you're responding to something. You just
think,
it doesn't seem that way to you because, you know, so there may be sometimes you're initiating, but like you can respond to anything. Like it's normally you're responding to something outside of yourself, right? And then you get a gut read on it and you're off. So you could be responding and you're just thinking you're initiating, right? In terms of human design language, if you were to bring an example to me, you know, then we could tease that apart and be like, okay, well, did something happen that you then responded to? Like I'll just make up something really simple because an example is easier. Let's say you've been thinking, I want to go on a vacation. I could really use a vacation. And you've had this thought in your brain and you're feeling like a little burnout. I could use a break. And so initiating would be as soon as vacation comes into your mind, you're like on the computer booking your flight.
Right.
Responding would be you are driving down the road and you see a billboard where that shows a beach and a beach chair and an umbrella and, you know, a book draped over the arm of the chair. And your body goes, oh my God, yes. And then you go home and book the tickets.
Okay. So the billboard was an initiation.
The billboard initiated you. The billboard flowed to you, right? You attracted that so that your body could say yes. Now, it might be you looked at the billboard and nothing happened. You didn't even barely notice it. But later you're reading a book and someone's talking about a sweet little cabin in the mountains under the trees and where it's quiet and there's no internet. And your body responds yes to that. And then you go on the mountain vacation.
So how will you use that? Okay, now we're going to end this here. On too long. Stacey, thank you so very much. Very much for welcome. Everything you did here today. It was a highlight for me. Very, very insightful. And like now I have a million other questions to ask, but I'll do that offline so everybody can just go back into their routine. This is human design, you guys. And I think you can start thinking and seeing what my wheels are spinning. And you can start applying that to yourself and see how that will work. So if you are an entrepreneur or somebody employed who feeling stagnant in your career and you're wondering what and how, taking a peek at your human design might be exactly what you need. And in that case, I highly suggest you look for Stacey. If you guys head over to the show notes, we have all of Stacey's links and ways of communicating with her and contacting her. So don't wait, initiate that move. Maybe you attracted this whole conversation. so that it could be here for you. Stacey, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And thank you for having me on and giving me the chance to talk about my favorite topic in the world. I enjoy it every time. So thank you so much.
Thank you.